And let's get to the highlights of a very important hearing that's going on in the Supreme Court. This is a suo motu COVID hearing. The Supreme Court has asked the centre on two very critical issues. One is on the dual vaccine pricing policy and the other on registration on COVID portal. Let's tell you what's really happened in the Supreme Court today. The centre has been asked about dual pricing policy. The Supreme Court has asked centre, you're asking states to compete with each other. For more on this, let's go across to Meenakshi on the broadcast. Meenakshi, thank you for joining us. Some very important questions being raised by the Supreme Court as far as dual vaccine pricing policy is concerned.
Well, yes, we are seeing a very heated debate in the Supreme Court, and some very pertinent questions are being raised by the Supreme Court, pertinent issues being highlighted by the Supreme Court, and the government really coming in for a lot of scrutiny on two big things. One is the differential vaccine pricing policy, and second is the COVID app registration being made mandatory. And both these fronts, the Supreme Court is posing tough questions to the central government. The Supreme Court is of the opinion, and I quote, we can't have differential pricing for the centre and state. Central government has wide powers to fix rates under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. Why leave it to the vaccine manufacturers to fix different pricing, unquote. This was one of the exact quotes which was posed to the central government. The solicitor is making representations on behalf of the central government. The Supreme Court also wanting to know from the government of India as to how does it expect for the rural masses of this country to register under the COVID app, which has now been made mandatory for a life-saving vaccine. Honorable Justice D.Y. Chandrachud coming down with some tough questions, asking the central government to smell the coffee, to keep its ears close to the ground, and to end the digital divide which exists between urban and rural India vis-a-vis the COVID app and the registration being made mandatory for access to life-saving vaccines. So critical questions being posed by the Supreme Court, but clearly on two issues the government is finding itself on a sticky wicket. One, like you rightly mentioned, is the vaccine differential pricing policy. Supreme Court completely frowning as to how there can be one set of rates for the central government and a different set of rates for the state government. And second is the COVID registration being made mandatory for a life-saving vaccine is also something the Supreme Court is frowning upon.
Right. Meenakshi, I'll come on that COVID portal in a bit. Another important thing that I want to highlight for our viewers is that the court is asking for policy documents. They are questioning the centre as to how such a policy on dual vaccine pricing was approved in the first place.
Well, that's right, Archana. That's another very significant, thing that has transpired in the hearing thus far, where Honorable Justice Ravindra Bhatt wants to see the policy document basis which the Government of India was able to arrive at this decision for having two sets of rates for a life-saving vaccine. One set of rates for the central government to be procuring these vaccines at, and the other set of rates for the state governments to be procuring these vaccines at. So, Honorable Justice Bhatt is of the opinion that this policy document basis which this decision has been taken has to be placed before the Supreme Court so that the Supreme Court can understand the logic and the rationale which the union government applied while arriving at this policy decision. So that document has also been sought by the Supreme Court to be placed before it as far as the central government goes on this issue. And therefore, the government is finding itself on a sticky wicket because remember, these are contentious issues. These are issues which have seen a lot of scrutiny and debate and obviously a lot of political brouhaha as well that has happened in the public domain. But now this is a judicial evaluation of a policy decision of the Government of India which is happening, and the Supreme Court clearly wants to see the policy document basis which the Government of India arrived at this decision.
Right. Meenakshi, another important point that you were highlighting was about the COVID portal. And, in fact, in the past also, there were so many voices that had raised this question about access, something like a life-saving drug or vaccine that is only limited to those people who have access to internet or those who can use smartphones. So very important observation there by Justice Chandrachud, who's in as many words said that smell the coffee, see what is happening across the country and amend the policy. Could you throw some light, and have we heard from the center on what the court has said so far on the digital divide?
Well, Archana, see, this is an ongoing matter. The solicitor has already told the Supreme Court he needs to take further instructions from the government on what the government wants to reply to the Supreme Court. These are questions which must have flummoxed the central government, because this is happening as we speak. So the solicitor will obviously need time and also briefing from the government, the respective bureaucrats and the ministers concerned about having an articulated position before the Supreme Court. But the big news, like you rightly mentioned, is for the first time we are seeing the Supreme Court frown upon the mandatory registration that the government has made via the COVID app for a life-saving vaccine. Honorable Justice D.Y. Chandrachud telling the government of India in no uncertain terms, and I quote, you say the situation is dynamic, but you must have ears to the ground. How will you answer the digital divide? There is a digital divide in the country, unquote. Furthermore, he went on to again observe as to how the government should be smelling the coffee, see what is happening across the country, and amend the policy. That is another observation that Honorable Justice D.Y. Chandrachud has made to the government just a short while back. Supreme Court clearly wanting to understand how does the government expect for the large segment of the population which resides in rural India to register via the COVID app for a life-saving vaccine. So these are issues which perhaps have not been evaluated judicially thus far, and clearly the government will have a lot of thinking to do as to how it can convince the Supreme Court on three or four critical aspects. One, the COVID registration app being made mandatory vis-a-vis the Supreme Court's concern for a large segment of the population of India which resides in the rural belt of this country, and obviously the other being the differential vaccine pricing policy. How will the government satisfy the Supreme Court why it has not used its powers under the Drug and Cosmetic Control Act, and why is it letting the vaccine manufacturers set and determine the price of the vaccine?
All right. Thank you so much, Meenakshi, for those updates. So very pertinent points and questions being asked by the Supreme Court there, asking the centre on its dual vaccine pricing policy and on the rural digital divide, because the access to COVID portal is only restricted to those who can operate smartphones. So this is a 3-judge bench comprising Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, L. Nageshwar Rao and S. Ravindra Bhatt, who have resumed hearing today in the suo motu case on COVID.